Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kendar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen, today's live. It's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. And if you are looking to support me, that is, on my Patreon. Today we are doing Chapter 85 of Breaking Step. Tibs' stifled scream had him sitting up and looking around the room, searching for the thing that had nearly reached him, already knowing it was not real. Hadn't been real when he'd first seen it a few days before, had ran from it and the terror it inspired. He had been certain he'd been careful. He'd been certain he'd been careful. He'd been certain, I don't. Probably why I had to. Anyway, he'd been certain he'd been careful. Let only the smallest strand reach the node of sight, and at first things were as expected. Secrets became more visible, unimpeded by the walls and buildings. They gained definition, the shape of a person, surreptitiously taking coins from a box, someone in bed with someone else, moving in ways Tibbs had wished he could stop seeing. At least there were no details to the shapes, and something else pulled his attention from all the other secrets by how much larger it was. Tibbs carefully made his way to the mouth of the alley. A secret this large might be dangerous, and it was right there, still indistinct among the townsfolk. A cloud of it spreading over everyone there, clinging to them as they exited it. He thought he could make out something within the secret, so to pierce it, he allowed only a sliver more into the node. He screamed at the sight, had turned and run. He'd cursed himself for not listening to Comdar's warning, as those lifeless eyes stayed with him even as he ran and fought to pull the darkness out, hoping he'd forget them and the rest of the things darkness had created. Its multiple appendages piercing through the people around it, its maw with too long teeth, that there had been some sense of it haunting his step, haunting him, that had remained even after he'd finally freed the node of all darkness and suffused himself with purity. The sense that woke him multiple times at a night since. Tibbs nearly barged into Crosa's room, barely regaining enough control to knock first. That the server hadn't been in the inn when Tibbs entered wasn't unexpected. With the sickness going around, there weren't as many customers, so not all the servers were needed. Even Jackal's absence could be explained. He was having them time with Krosef, or he was out to the pit, or to train the Omega runners, or at the merchants, or there could be so many reasons, but none of them would have explained the look of fear Russell had given him before his eyes flickered to the door leading to the stairs. It's Tibbs. He extended his sense until he made out Jackal and Clara and someone who had to be Krosef, lying on the bed. But who he could barely sense. Someone barely sense who had to be Krosef, lying on the bed. He'd kept his sense tight to him since the last botched attempt at using darkness with his node of sight, because this time it had also left him with this certainty that the delusion was lurking in all the places he couldn't see. He was in before either said anything. Jackal was seated on the far side of the bed, holding Krosef's too pale hand, while Clara sat on the other side, tiredly glaring at the unmoving Krosef. How is he? Tibbs whispers, hoping she'd know more than what his sense told him. He's not dead, she replied angrily. Tibbs stared at her in surprise. Isn't that good? Of course it's good. Just makes no sense. She ran a hand over her face, grumbling. Nothing about this makes any sense. How doesn't how doesn't it make sense? Tibbs looked at Jackal, but he was looking at his man, seemingly unaware of them. She motioned to Khrushchev. His father asked for a cleric when he fainted during the night. Tibbs' chest tightened at his remembered nightmare and how his friends were falling in the wake of the thing hunting him. It took an effort to convince himself he hadn't done this to Khrushchev. They didn't. Her expression soured. There's so many suffering that only those with money warrant. Warranted. When I heard about it, I rushed here and she sighed. He was stronger when I arrived, but nothing I did helped. He faded away until she motioned to the unconscious men on the bed. They don't usually last this long. This Tibbs hesitated. Doesn't that mean he's going to be okay then? But he's not getting any stronger, she replied, slumping in the chair. I can't find anything wrong with him. Clearly there is, but none of the etchings and weaves I've learned are telling me anything. Even the best clerics we have aren't finding anything. No one here has ever seen or even heard of something like this. Even the best cleric encounters. Okay, this needs a break of some sort. She said in exasperation. Even the best can I put it, if I do that, if I have this, even the best cleric we have aren't finding anything. No one here has heard or seen has ever seen or heard of something like this, she said in exasperation. Even the best cleric encounters. Okay, I don't normally change dialogue, even, but yeah, man. Dialogue gets more leeway, but I still don't. Even the best of us encounters a sickness that's too strong. Okay, why don't you like it now? Even the best of us encounters. No, sorry. Even the best of us encounters a sickness that's too strong for them, and the sick will die. But they will find out what the sickness is in the process. She motioned to Khrushchev again. There's nothing left there. Wait, what? Oh, okay. Not yet, Tibbs wanted to tell her. He still sensed some life in Khrushchev, even if it was so very faint. And yet, she said, he's holding on. If I could work out how, it would give me an idea of what's happening to him. I could use that to help others. But the fact that he isn't dead yet is just like this sickness. There's nothing to explain it. Tibbs studied Khrushchev's essence. It moved, if barely so. And people who weren't sick, even those without an element, the essence moved through them along what Tibbs now recognized were their channels. When someone fell sick or got hurt, the flow was affected. Injuries were easy for him to identify because he could see the problem along with sensing how the flow responded to it. Sickness affected it in less clear ways, but even if it obstructed the flow, it only did so where the problem was. The weakness caused the essence to simply fade as it slowed until there was nothing there and they died. So Clara was right. How was it that Khrushchev's essence still flowed? As faint as it was, it should be still. I needed to try something. Is there anything you can do for him? Tibbs asked in as conciliatory a tone as he could. She shook her head. Until I figure out what is, he squeezed her shoulder. Why don't you go sleep? I'm sure Jackal is grateful for what you did, but you have a team to think about. I can't leave, she protested. If anything changes, I'll send someone to get you, I promise. Her determination faded, then she deflated. Her determination faltered, then she deflated. I'm sorry I couldn't help, she told Jackal as she stood, but the fighter didn't acknowledge her. Tibbs extended his sense to follow her until she left the inn, then hurried to pull it back in and reminded himself there was nothing in the shadows. It was only his imagination and the lingering effect of the darkness on the node. He took Clara's seat and focused on Krosef. Okay, what is going on with you? In anyone, even those who were sick, there was a cycle to how the essence flowed in them. It was faster in runners and stronger. It was faster in runners, and the stronger they were, the faster it flowed. He hadn't bothered to investigate that once he noticed it, since the list of what he needed to do was already too long. In contrast, Krosef's flow only went in one direction, drifting out of him as it moved. So where did it originate? You realize he didn't know the answer to any of them. Tibbs absorbed it, but did others do the same? If so, how did the townsfolk do it? Only runners were supposed to be able to interact with essence. He pushed the question away. How townsfolk did it didn't matter. What did was how could Korsaf be doing it? Now, how could Korsaf be doing it now? The essence was too faint for Tibbs to make out details unless he narrowed his focus, and then he had to move back along the barely noticeable flow. A sob from Jackal, and in looking up to see if his friend was okay, Tibbs lost the sense of the flow. When his mind wandered and he questioned his ability to do this, the flow was gone, fighting the fear that his nightmare was making its way through the wall, and he had to start over again. Each time, he had to first breathe the distraction away, then his frustration, and then start on the work again. He lost track of how many times he'd restarted when he followed the flow back within the hand Jekyll held. He confirmed Jekyll wasn't, somehow, pushing essence into his man, then was perplexed as to how it could come from there. Jekyll, he whispered, I need you to let go of his hand. The father shook his head. Tibbs tried to pry the finger open, but the hand turned to stone. Jekyll, I need to see his hand. I need to see where the essence is coming from. Another vehement shake of the head. Tibbs gently took the hand on his side and offered it to Jekyll. Take this one. His friend looked at it for so long, Tibbs wasn't sure he saw it. Then, slowly, he took it in his other hand, then the other, and pressed his lips to the fingers. Tibbs stared at the ring on Krosef's index. It was so plain he'd forgotten about it. The ring Jackal had given his man when he promised to be careful from that point on. Promised they'd have a life together. The ring Stowe had given Jackal for Krosef because he considered the server important, not only to Jackal but to all runners. The ring Stowe had enchanted so Krosef could have a life as long as Jackal's. It was where the flow began. Faint, but noticeably stronger. Slowly faded as it moved. Tibbs touched to get a sense of the weave, but it didn't work. Stowe had enchanted it and all the items that given that day, so no one but the wearer could sense the weave. He hadn't wanted them to be accident. Oh, right. I'm going to have to double check, but I think I know what Ben was talking about here. He hadn't wanted them to be accidentally discovered. All Tibbs could do was sense the effect of the ring, how it pulled. Even if Ben is right, even if I know how to adjust it, but so that it won't change everything else. But okay, all Tibbs could do was sense the effect of the ring, how it pulled the essence from outside and pushed a little life essence into him. There was so little because life essence was barely in the air around them, or was it just how much the weave was made to send out? Tibbs took Krosef's hand and, after hesitating, okay, this needs to be changed because this wording has been dealt with and it caused damage. After hesitated, um, willed. Tibs took to and, after hesitating, willed essence next to it and tilted the table he envisioned it on. Um, as it fell through the server's hand, it added some to what the ring provided. It joined the flow, making it slightly more noticeable. Okay. How do I account for this? All right, let's try this. Tibbs took Krosef's hand and, after hesitating, willed the essence next to it and tilted the table he envisioned it on. As it fell through the server's hand, it added some to what the ring provided. It joined the flow, making it slightly more noticeable. He caught what fell through and, instead of absorbing it, made it a cloud around the hand, and the flow caught more, strengthening it again. Hey, Khrushchev said sleepily when the flow felt close to what the townsfolk had. Why aren't you in bed with... The kiss cut him off, and Tibbs looked away. Not that I'm complaining, but you usually aren't. Jekyll, what's wrong? Tears fell as Jekyll pulled Khrushchev to him. The server noticed Tibbs and looked further puzzled. He put a hand between them. Jekyll, let go and tell me what's going on. You have the weakness, Tibbs said. Khrushchev frowned and stopped pushing. I'm fine. I mean, I'm tired, but as soon as this oaf gets in bed, I'll sleep some more. Tibbs shook his head. You feel that way because I added life essence to what the ring is giving you, but whatever is causing it is still there, and no one knows what it is. Joseph tapped Jekyll's back, then slapped it forcefully. Let go. I'm not dying. Tibbs said so. Reluctantly, Jekyll released him, and Khrushchev moved on to until he was seated, his back against the headboard. Okay, what can we do? You're staying in bed, Jekyll ordered. His man glared at him. I'm not you. I don't go running off to help when I'm hurt because I think I'm too tough to get even more injured. Yes, I'm staying here until we figure out what's going on. He looked at Tibs. Or at least until I know what I need to do to remain healthy. Tibs sensed Khrushchev. The essence was already growing fainter. He could add to it. He could add to it again, but it meant he'd have to stay close by all the time. He'd do it, but it wasn't practical. He had a lot of other things to do. But he needed to know right now. What did he need to know right now so he could plan? Why the ring only pushed a little essence into Jekyll. It had added enough blah. It had added enough to balance the loss before, so why wasn't it doing it anymore? What he needed was someone who knew more than he did. Where was Dawn? He expanded his sense and pulled it back in as his imagination screamed the thing was there. He breathed the fear down. There was nothing in the shadows. He could see in them without help since he had darkness. It was just his nightmare. He expanded his sense, then was up. Don't move, he ordered Khrushchev, then ran to get the sorcerer, pulling him away from his meal. Once they were in the stairs, he explained what had happened. How do I work out why the ring isn't keeping the essence at the level it is? He asked, closing the door behind them. Dawn looked at Khrushchev. How are you feeling? Tired? Like when I worked through an entire day and night without stopping. Dawn nodded. It can't be what you thought. If it was because there's too little essence for the ring to draw in, Khrushchev wouldn't have survived. This is some other mechanism. He searched a pocket of his robe, then pulled an amulet. The corruption drained out, and he handed it to Tibs. Fill this with your essence. Isn't this going to be just like drawing it from the air? He asked as he pushed essence into it. Enchanted item can function better with access to a concentrated form of the needed essence. It's why most of them used by non-sorcerers have their own reserve that will refill over time. If they don't have that, they either can only be powered by one element, and they only have the appropriate adventures, and then only the appropriate adventure can use it, or only sorcerers can power them. Even before Tibs placed the amulet in Khrushchev's hand, the ring pulled on the essence it contained. Now, more flowed out into the server, and as Khrushchev closed his hand on the amulet, he already looked more awake. Dawn smiled. I think we know how to proceed. And that concludes chapter 85 of Breaking Step. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter is going to be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read the story, as well as the other books in the series, it is up for free on Royal Road. If you want to read ahead of Royal Road and support me in the process, that is on my Patreon. And if you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. The links are in the notes, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.